Hello, my name is Untitled, and in this video I want to talk about processes in iDempiere. So if you're using the application, you may have seen the one or other process, and there are several ways to start a process. Here's the first example of how you could start a process. It can be located in the menu tree, so when you click on it you can have different parameters you can set, and then just start the process. But there are also other ways to start a process. For example, if you attach a process to a column in a window, then you can create one of these wonderful buttons. For example, the Create Fields button in the tab of the Window tab and Field window. And here you also can have parameters, of course, and then run the process. And there's also another way to start a process from within a window. With this toolbar button right here, you can have processes attached to a button, and instead of having the button in the window, you can move it up here in this process button, and then you get this wonderful drop down of all the processes. And there's another way how you can start a process. You can schedule them with the scheduler window. And here you can create a new entry for my process, for example. Then you have to select the process, which you, by the way, create with this window, but we will do this later. And then you can set a schedule. And as you see, there are already some entries here, but let's zoom into this window and create our own. And here you can select a frequency, like daily, hourly, minutely, and set the frequency. Or you can even create cron scheduling patterns, like in the cron tab in a Unix system. So, which looks something like this, I believe. And here you can create your own patterns, which you then, I haven't saved it, so save it here, which you then can use for your scheduling, and you can set the supervisor. This is the user who then runs the process, because if you have a process run by a scheduler, then it has no graphical user interface, and therefore you have to provide the parameters here in the parameter tab. Okay, but let's create a simple process which will run from either a window, a toolbar, or from the menu. So the first thing you have to do is to create a new process, just right here in the report and process window. So I call it my process, and I want it to be available for all clients on my system. And here I have to provide a class name. So I type in org evinos processes, my process. Okay, save this one. The next thing I do is create a new menu entry, so I can run my process from the menu. And then I can start to implement this process. Oh, I forgot that I can provide parameters, of course. So open the parameter tab. And let's provide a string. of course in the parameters, which you see when you open a process. You also can have default logic, read-only and display logic. So for example, if you have a process which you attach to the mProduct window, then you could for example have the mProduct ID, which is ID of course. And as a default logic you could use the mProduct ID. And here you can say the display logic, it should only be displayed if mProduct ID equals 0. So by this way, when you would attach the process to the mProduct window and you start the process, the parameter for the mProduct ID would be read from the context, and only if you just created a new entry and there is no mProduct ID already, then this field would be displayed. Or for example, if you would start this process from the menu instead of from the mProduct window, then there would also be no mProduct ID, so then the parameter would be displayed. Okay, let's provide a second parameter, checkbox for example. Which is a yes/no field. And the third one, a date and time. Okay, I believe that should be enough. So now we can go to our code. The first thing when you create processes is you have to create a new plugin. Here I uncheck this checkbox because I don't want my custom code in the iDempiere main repository, so I go to another directory on my hard drive and create a new directory. Select the OSGI framework Equinox. Here I use Java 6 because it can always happen that a client still uses Java 6 and I want my code, I want him to be able to run my code, so I always use the Java 6 execution environment. Click on Finish. Create a new package. Or I called the package processes in the application dictionary. So here on the process window, my class has to fit this name right here. It don't has to fit this name, but it's better. So if at some time another person want to develop my process, then he can better find the class. So I forgot one thing, open the manifest and go to the dependencies tab, and here add the base plugin and plugin utils, like this. And now in my process I can extend the server process and here implement the unimplemented method. And every process consists of two methods. The prepare method, which is normally used to read the parameters you get from the application, and the do it method where you do some stuff. Okay. So now I have a process, but the application don't know about my process yet, because I don't tell the application that I have a process. And to do this, you create another package, which I call org evenos factories, and here I create a new my process factory. My process factory implements the iProcess factory, and here when this factory is called, I get the class name, which is the class name from the process. So I copy this one, and then I simply check if the class name equals my process name. Then I return a new instance of my process. Oops. Okay. So if you have more than one process in your plugin, just add another if statement below. And then the next thing you have to do is to create a component definition for your process factory, so the OSGI framework can find it. To do this, I create a new component definition. Yeah, give it a name. And here, this name has to be unique through the whole application. So what I like to do is to use my plugin's name, because the plugin name is unique normally. And then I add process factory, and now I can be sure that this name is unique. Then click here on browse and select the process factory. And then you have to add a property, which is called service ranking. It's an integer, and I give it a value of 100 or so. And this property is used that when the OSGI pattern to locate a list of services is used, then this list is ordered by the component's service ranking. So here's the OSGI pattern to get processes. As you can see, the OSGI framework is asked to provide a list of all the iProcess factory classes. And then it is iterated over this factory classes. And if the factory returns an instance of a process, then this process is returned. And I want my process to be the first in the list, for example. So for processes, this is not so bad if you don't use the service ranking. But at other places, if you have a factory and the default factory from iDempiere is loaded before your own factory, it can happen that your own factory is never called. So I always add this to my component definitions. Then I go to the services tab, and here I add the iProcess factory service. And now when my plugin is started, it registers itself to the OSGI framework and says I provide a iProcess factory in this class. And then when the OSGI pattern in the core class is run, then my process, this one, will be returned. Okay. So since I extend the server process, I get some interesting variables right here. For example, I should get a logger. Yeah, it's this one, the C logger. So I don't have to implement my own. I just can use it. So here I can say log. Let's log a warning, because my application is set to only show warnings and server log messages. So here I am in the prepare. Oops. So what else do we have here? Yeah, we have context, we have a process info, and we have this process UI object we will talk about later. So I believe it was this class who has information about the parameters. Yes, you have this method to get the parameters. So in the prepare method, you normally read the parameters. So I call mpy I already have a protected method for this. Okay, as you can see, it just yeah, gets the parameters right here. So let's get this array here. And then iterate over them. And the first thing I do is I read the parameter name, and then I check if the parameter name is one of my parameters. So if you take a look at the parameter, you have a name, but the parameter name here is the column name, which is this one. So now I can take a look at the parameter name. There they are, a string, a checkbox, a datetime. So here I can check if paraname equals, I use ignore case. I like to always use the ignore case because if I have a capital letter or not, then it doesn't matter, and it's a little bit slower, but in modern architecture this costs you nearly nothing. So I check for a string. And I also check for checkbox. And I check for a datetime. So let's take a look at another process. Because I also want to provide some error handling. And I'm really lazy, so I just want to copy this line right here and place it in here. Okay, so yeah, normally because you read the parameters in the prepare method, I need some variables here to to store me the values. Is it not a timestamp? Get parameter as timestamp. Okay. Yeah, and as you saw, I can now read the parameters value, and I have different methods to do this. I can read the object directly. I can if I know what type of parameter this is, I can read it as a string. If I would have a number field, for example, I could get a decimal. If it would be an integer or an ID field, I could get the ID. If it's a yes/no field, then I can get it as a boolean. So here I have a string. I also could directly use the as object, but yeah, just to show you. So here's my checkbox, and this is get parameter as boolean, like this. And what it does is, yeah, first it checks if there is the parameter. If not, then it's definitely false. So if there is a parameter, then it checks if it's a boolean, and if yes, then it returns me the boolean, and if not, then it uses the yes/no checkbox pattern. So it checks if yes equals my parameter value and returns me the boolean value of this. So save this one, and then I can implement my business logic in my process. So yeah, I don't have a real case right here, so I will just log the informations from the parameters. And to log information, you have two ways in a process. You can use the log, the C-logger, but this logs only on the console, and if you have configured the application, then logs for warnings and for server messages, they are stored in a database also. But the server process has another cool method, which is called add_log. And what this log does, it writes the messages you provide here into a separate table on the database, which I'll show you then in a second. So let's add a log with a string. And yeah, you have 3 methods to do this. And as you can see here, you can provide an ID, an integer, a date, which is a timestamp, a number, I believe, which is a big decimal, and a message. And the third one also has a table ID and a record ID. And what you can do here is, if you provide a table ID and a record ID, then after the process finishes, you can directly zoom into the record from this table. So let's provide an ID here. Like this. Yeah, here in the datetime field, we can just use the datetime which we provided in the parameter. Oops. Let's use big decimal 1 here. Okay, then let's just use the string. And here our checkbox is checked. Yes. Checkbox. And then let's provide a record ID for the product table. Or we run it on the system client, so select from a table where table name like ID table. So my table ID is 100. And the entry, yeah, let's also use 100. I believe this could work. So we can jump into the table and column window into the entry for the AD table. Table. Okay. But there's more you can do in processes. Of course, you can do all the business logic you want. You can load and manipulate model classes. You can run SQL code, for example, if you just want to just to execute an SQL update or read from a value from the database, then you can use the execute update to run an update statement. And I believe the DB class also has a method to read from the database, get SQL value. So if you just want to read one value, get SQL value. So if you just want to execute SQL statement and read one value from the database, then you can use this one, for example, to read strings or timestamps and other objects. And you can also, of course, use prepared statements to manipulate the database. But there's one interesting thing. For processes with graphical user interfaces, this will not work if you run the process via a scheduler, because the scheduler has no graphical interface. But for processes with an interface, this can be helpful in some places. You can, for example, do some calculations, and then you want feedback from the user to make a choice. And I believe there is a process using this, where some things are generated, some entries, and then right before the process finishes, you are asked if you want to print the new entries or not. And to do this, you can use the process UI object provided here, and then you can call process UI, which has two methods. The one is to ask for a boolean value, a yes or no value, and the second one is to ask for a string message. So use the first one and say please yes or no. And here you have to implement a new callback. And as you see, this is an anonymous inner type or inner class, and if I would run the process just like this, then it would provide me with a new pop-up where I can check yes or no, but it would finish before I make my choice. So I need to block my process, and the way I do this is by creating a new string builder. And if I would use this here, to append the result, then I get this warning because it's not final. So I have to make it final. The reason I use a string builder is that, you see, I have to make this variable final, so I can use it in the inner type. And if I would use a boolean here, it wouldn't work. But a string builder, which is now final, I still can append, use this method to append things to it. So what I can do now is, while my yes no length equals 0, I do nothing. So I just have endless while loop, and as long as there's no return from the user, this loops through. Okay, so when this one finishes, I also want to ask a string, so I make an final string builder string, and I also make one for string provided. So the reason I use two string builders here is I want one string builder to block my process, just like this right here, and I want one string builder to store the string I provided, because I could also provide no string and then it would never finish my process. So again, I have the process UI ask for input. Please enter a string and provide a new callback. So here the first thing I do is string provided append bool is true, for example, or any other character. Then I copy the while loop here and switch it to string provided, and then to the string I append my result, like this one. And here I will also log my string and boolean. Like this. So now I stop my server, and then I can go to my plugins configuration, activate my plugin and make it auto start, run my server again, so here's my new process, but that's the wrong one, I believe. Yes, this is the one I want. So this is my string parameter. I check the checkbox and I select today 12, 13, 14, and start my process. And you see, first the prepare method gets called, then the do it method gets called, and now I get asked to input my my boolean, which is this one. And now the while loop is blocking. So I decide yes. Oops. So I just had a problem with my browser. Yeah, I restarted the process, entered the same parameters again, and as you can see now, after I clicked the yes for the yes parameter, I now have to enter a string. So I enter a new string here, and the process finished. And as you can see here, our add log adds a log with the string parameter we provided. We get our datetime, and yeah, this is the one I can click on, and it should lead me to table and column ID table ID entry, which works, as you can see. We selected true for the first input, and I entered my string for the second input. I recommend you to when you use the process UI to ask for an input, that you not use this pattern, because a process can probably lock different tables, and if you use this, then I recommend you to use a timeout. So how can a timeout be realized? So I go to my ticket tracking system, the iDempiere Jira, because the ask for input is relatively new, and I know that Carlos Ruiz provided an example of how you can implement a timeout for this. So yeah, I would recommend you to check this out also. So where it is, here's the ticket, and here's this class bank transfer Java, and yeah, this is a sample of how you can create a process also. So as you can see again here, the first thing you do is to read the parameters, and then you do some stuff like here, and then here you ask for some input, and this method is really interesting. So it says wait for, and then this is the string buffer used to determine when you finish, and this is the seconds the process should wait. And if you take a look at the implementation of the wait for method, you see that he calculates the number of cycles, and then he says while the length of the string buffer is 0, he sends the thread to sleep for 200 milliseconds, and then adds 1 to the cycles. And when the cycles are greater than the max cycles, he throws a new error, a timeout error. You could also implement that, for example, if the max cycles are reached, then instead of throwing an error, you could provide some default value to this string buffer, which would be another method how you can use this. So I think this is everything I can say about processes. You learned how to read parameters, you learned how to add logs, which you then can see. Oh, I just forgot one thing. I wanted to show you the window in the user interface in the web UI, where you can see stuff about your processes. So let me refresh this site, and here you have a window called Process Audit, this one. And in this window you can see all the processes which run in the application. So yeah, as you can see, I cancelled the process because it got stuck for whatever reason, I don't know. Maybe my browser just needed a refresh, but I cancelled the server. So here you see it, it's still processing, but in reality there's no process running. So this process I just ran some minutes ago, and the result was 1, which means that the process finished with no error. And here you have the parameters I provided, and also you have this table with the log entries. So here are all the add logs I made in my process. For example, the daytime. And this one is also interesting. This is the log with the link which led me to the table and column window, and if I click on this button, it will open the table and column window again and jump to there. So yeah, error message. If you throw a new error, then the error message would be written to here, and the result would be 0. And you can do this, for example, as you saw in the bank transfer Java, you can throw a new exception, or you can return, you can return a string here. And if you return a string called error, I believe, then it will also write the error message to here, and the result will be 0. So yeah, let's just check it. Yeah, you can see when exception is thrown, then the exception is logged. And if the return message equals error, then the success is false. Yeah, so I think that's all I can say about processes. And I hope this video helps you, and I see you in the next video.